We all set? All right, thanks everybody for being here. Good afternoon. Can't believe it's the time for the October monthly crime press conference. Seems like we just got done with September. With me is Bobby Boyce, Ben Tucker, of course the mayor, Carlos Gomez, Dermot Shea, and Chief of Patrol, Terry Monahan. So I'm not going to steal Dermot's thunder. Dermot's going to speak about the crime stats. After I get done speaking, the mayor's going to speak, Dermot's going to speak, and then Bobby Boyce is going to give you some updates on some cases that we need some help with. So, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Commissioner, I want to congratulate you on another record-breaking month. I want to congratulate First Deputy Commissioner Tucker and Chief of Department Gomez and the entire leadership team and the men and women of the NYPD, once again setting a record. The month of October, the safest October in the CompStat era, going all the way back to 1994. It is a really impressive feat that the NYPD keeps setting records and is resolute on the fact that we're going to keep driving crime down. You'll hear from Deputy Commissioner Shea, but a couple of things that are worth noting up front, comparing October 2016 to October 2015. Overall, major index crimes are down 9.1% in just a year's time, 9.1% drop in overall index crimes. And we are particularly pleased to see, in terms of homicides, a very striking decrease. Month-to-month comparison, a decrease of 32% from October last year, October this year, comparing those 2 months, a 32% decrease in homicides. The human impact of that has to be looked at. We talk about the fact that one crime is one crime too many. We're not going to stop until we make this city as safe as it possibly can be, but we also have to celebrate when the good work at NYPD means people are alive and they're walking the streets who might not have been otherwise. And to see that homicide number for the month of October go down so sharply is really an extraordinary step forward by the NYPD. Want to remind everyone, this has been a topic in the presidential election, and I think, like most Americans, I would say, thank God the presidential election will be over in 1 week, but something that all Americans can agree on. But the issue of stop and frisk came up. This is another piece of evidence. Since stop and frisk is down, the use of stop and frisk is down 97% since the high point of 2011. We continue to see consistent decreases in crime as the unconstitutional use of stop and frisk was done away with and precision policing was focused on. It's made a huge, huge difference. We got more work to do. We know that. We believe that two things are going to allow us to go farther. The fact that we'll have 2,000 more officers by January, 2,000 more officers compared to where we were just a few years ago, first major increase in the force in 15 years, and the fact that neighborhood policing is becoming the norm throughout this city, 51% of precincts now having NCO officers. Those two factors are going to make a big difference and allow us to go farther. We're proud of these achievements. My profound thanks to the men and women of the NYPD. Dermot will go into the details, and obviously particularly pleased with the fact we see continued progress on the issue of guns, and you'll hear that from Dermot, another thing that proves that this precision approach is making a very big difference. Just quickly in Spanish, gracias al NYPD, este fue el mes de octubre más seguro en la historia moderna de nuestra ciudad. Vamos a continuar ese éxito, mejorando la relación entre la policía y las comunidades. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dermot Shea will give you a rundown on our stats for October. Dermot?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Commissioners. So with the end of October, we're seeing strong crime reductions across 6 out of the 7 index crime categories. As the Mayor alluded to, in terms of overall index crime for October, in the CompStat era, we've never seen numbers this low. In fact, it's now 7 straight months of index crime reduction in New York City, which is remarkable. Overall, we saw a 9% reduction in index crime. We saw a reduction in housing crime in New York City. We saw a reduction also in transit-related crime. So across multiple crime categories. I think most most startling was that reduction in homicides that the mayor alluded to. 21 recorded homicides for the month of October in New York City. That's down from 31 just 12 months ago, and that's a 32% reduction. 800 overall, roughly, fewer crimes, index crimes reported in New York City for the month of October. So now we're poised with 2 months left. As we get closer to the end of the year, we don't like to look too far ahead, but with 2 months left, as the numbers are settling down and we have 10 months to analyze, we are poised to see a historic year in New York City crime. We truly are. Some high points, and the overall October numbers will be given to you on a press release. I'm not going to read those off to you, but just some of the highlights that we can now talk about through October 31st. Nearly 3,000 fewer index crimes this year. We're at a level, again, that we've never seen in New York City in terms of overall index crime. We've recorded 17 fewer homicides in New York City this year. That places it, other than 2014, as the second lowest year so far in recorded homicides in New York City in the Amstad era. And in terms of shooting incidents, through October 31st of this year, 103 fewer victims through last night at midnight. That's 93 fewer incidents. Keeping in mind that what we're seeing in some other cities across the U.S., we are quite proud of that statistic. We've never had fewer shooting incidents in New York City since we've started recording shooting incidents. When you look at where we are now, we don't believe we're done. We think we can push this crime lower. As we sit here today recapping October's crime, people are sitting in other parts of this very building right now reviewing cases, focusing our efforts in on people that we believe are still driving crime and violence in New York City. Length of cases, targets of these cases, strategies, in collaboration with our prosecutor friends. So that is going on not just on a weekly basis, it's literally day by day. And as I said, it is going on as we sit here now. We believe we can drive these numbers down further. When you look at the arrest numbers for New York City and where we are, we're about 7% down this year in overall arrests. As I've said before, more focus. Our felony arrests remain up. Probably very startling to some, our gun arrests are up. Gun arrests up in a year that we have never had fewer shooting incidents. How are we doing it? We're making basically an extra gun arrest a day this year, nearly 300 more. We have the most gun arrests in New York City in 6 years this year. And as the mayor alluded to, and the police commissioner, 97% fewer stops. These gun arrests are being made through search warrants, a combination of informants, increased intelligence collection, and then acting on that intelligence. So by and large, what we see, fewer index crime as we approach the end of the year. We think we're poised to have really a historic year, and that's going across multiple crime categories. Just through the first 10 months of the year, what crime categories are up? Felony assaults remain up, rape remains up, and grand larceny, which has been up for most of the year, is settling. We are near flat, but still slightly up in that category.
Okay, thank you, Dermot. Bob Boyce is going to talk about a couple of cases we're going to need your help with. Bob?
Good afternoon, everyone. Just going to highlight 3 cases, 2 of which the first you see from left to right, hardcore perpetrators, individuals that we're looking for. That third male all the way to your right is a 16-year-old. He's wanted for a crime. We also want to get him in because we're concerned about his well-being as well. First male, to my left, everybody's left, is David Vaz. He is a career criminal with 21 priors. He gets out of jail in March 2012. And once he's on parole, and he's a parole absconder, by the way, and he does a shooting in the 4-3 precinct on 7/24/12. We then identify him and then start looking for him. We believe he leaves the city at that point. He comes back in December of 2013. He commits a gunpoint robbery in the 7-5 precinct in East New York. So he starts in the Bronx, where he's originally from, and now he commits a robbery, a gunpoint, in December of 2013. Fast forward to 9/15/16 this year, he does a robbery in outside of Linden houses, where he shoots 2 people, one intentionally, one unintentionally. And it's a 51-year-old lady on a park bench. So we're seeking him right now. Any information, please call the TIPS hotline about him. It would be great to get him off the street. Second individual is another career criminal with 7 priors. He gets out of jail just in 2016 of this year, in January. He then commits a murder on October 8th of this month. He's the only person we are now looking for, identified from the October murders. He shoots a coworker. He beats a coworker and blunt force trauma to the head, and Enrique Ruiz in the 4-3 precinct. So we're seeking him as well. His name is Samuel Feliciano. He's a 45-year-old male. Again, a career criminal. He knows we're looking for him. Any information to the TIPS hotline would be helpful. The last individual we're talking about, we spoke about it last week. We had an individual who did a robbery of an elderly person in the Kessel Little Houses. We've identified this individual as Trayvon Hines. He's a 16-year-old male. He lives at 2120 Randall Avenue. He's got 1 prior, but we're concerned about him. We've been looking for him the last couple of days. He's not in school. He's not at home. So not only did he commit this crime, but he's on a run right now. So this is apparently it's not a department photo. It's a photo we obtained from someplace else, and we're looking from anybody who can help us with information. Now, when I put this out, initially he's going up the stairs. I said that the community would give him up, and they did. They identified him the next day. People from the Castle Houses identified him. We showed him to the 85-year-old lady, the victim of the crime, and she immediately identified him as well. Going towards, we see what Dermot talked about before. We're down in a lot. We're doing over 7%. We're down in robberies. But one of the upticks we do have is crimes on elderly. So some of the issues we have, I've dedicated a lot of resources to addressing that. We have a deception burglary arrest of what we call the Cristo crime family. They do deception burglaries around the country. They hit 5 times in Queens. We arrested them live on a surveillance that we had in the 108 precinct. The first one is Anthony Cristo. He's, again, a career criminal, 13 priors. His ex-wife, Teresa Howard, she's wanted in 3 states, and she has his 24 prior arrests. And his sister, his name is Rosie Cristo. She's under arrest as well. They're all still in custody right now with high bails. In fact, Teresa is remanded because of her. She's wanted in 2 other states. So we are doing a lot to protect the elderly as best we can, and we're making a lot of arrests. And each time I said I review each case that comes in, we put out video each night of persons committing crimes against the elderly, and we'll continue to do so. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Bob. We'll open it up to some questions. Rocco?
Commissioner Shea or Chief Boyce. The police department has said that about 30% of people who were shot and survived don't cooperate with police. Is that percentage, has it improved at all? Will it improve? And is the neighborhood community policing program something that theoretically could drive that number down, or do you suspect you're always going to get about 30% people?
No, I anticipate that number coming down. I think in the advent of neighborhood policing and creating that connection, I think we'll be able to drive that number down. But I'll let Bob talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, Rocco, just...
You got it.
How's that? Good. Rocco, one of the big decreases that we had this year is gang-related shootings. Historically and to date, not a lot of people cooperate who are gang members who get shot. So because of that decrease, we had over 112, I think, less gang shootings than we had last year. An incredible amount. We do garner more cooperation this year than we have in prior years. We just had the 7th precinct, 4 people shot on a corner. We were able to identify that individual and arrest him immediately. So we're getting more because there's less gang members being shot. Very fortunate.
You mentioned a while ago you were planning to have detectives drill down into drug overdose cases. I'm wondering where you are with that, what your findings might be at this point.
Sure. Tony, we embarked on a very ambitious thing to investigate every overdose that happens in this city, and right now there's over 500. And it's a two bifurcated issue. We have a squad detective take a case as well as a narcotic detective take a case, and they both co-jointly work the case within our ECMS system, our computer system. So each are assigned specific tasks in that case. We needed the expertise of the narcotics division to help us out. In that time, we're addressing 2 issues. We're addressing trafficking, heroin, and fentanyl coming into New York City, To date, we've recovered over 1,300 pounds of heroin coming in this year, of heroin coming in via Mexico for that part. And we also taken down street sets of narcotic operations. 3 in Staten Island, Operation Trusted Source, Broken Boulevard, and the Beach Boys. These are issues, takedowns we made just in the last couple of months. It's street sales of heroin. So we're attacking it from 2 different angles here, obviously, trafficking and street sales as well. We just took down a case in Upper Manhattan that's going to the Southern District. That individual selling heroin to that male who had an overdose will be charged in the Southern District, and we'll do time for the equivalent of manslaughter. He's going away for a long time. And that's where we seem to be going. All 5 district attorneys are involved, as well as the Southern District and SNC, Special Prosecutor. So it's a very intense project. We have to get phone records. We look at heroin stamps. We're with the LCME, with Dermot Shea's office as well, to identify each case and go into their life. And that's talking to friends and whatever they had any kind of rehabilitation. Often we find people just come out of rehab, they go back to their habits, and it's 60% purity right now in heroin because of fentanyl. So that's the issue. So a big effort by us put forward the narcotics squads and our criminal enterprise division.
And hold on, Tony, that's on 3 levels, too. There's the national, regional, that's the NYPD with the DEA, that's the DETF. And then on the local level, the borough level, you'll have major case teams in each borough. And then on the real local level in the precincts, you'll have precinct teams also. So we're doing this on many different levels.
You've said that there's neighborhood policing in about 50% of the precincts. Can you say with any certainty whether or not you'll need to increase the size of the NYPD to fulfill bringing out neighborhood policing to the rest of the city?
We're doing an analysis now. We're looking to get some efficiencies within the department to move people back out to patrol. But Chief Monahan's got, I'm sure he'll have something to add to the neighborhood policing.
Again, we're rolling it out very slowly. It takes time with each command. We'll be doing another 4 commands in January. We have to look through our resources right now and add additional resources to try and get this out throughout the entire city.
There's been a bit of a wave of armed robberies on Staten Island in the last week or so, and I was just curious, has there been any updates on those cases and whether or not you guys suspect it might be linked to drug activity and people robbing so they can have money for drugs?
Bob?
Sure, I can handle that. That's pattern 23 in Staten Island. That's a 12-case pattern. Now, 3 of the cases happen in Jersey, 9 in Staten Island. We have 1 arrest of that. We have a Victor Abraham who was arrested. We believe he's in part. Now, they consist of purse snatches, knife point, and robberies. We don't believe it's derived from any kind of narcotic need or addiction right now. These are young fellows. We got one ID'd. We're looking to arrest the other 2. All right, now, we have a car that goes back and forth over the bridge. That's been identified as one of the suspect's mothers. So there's a lot going on in this case. I just can't give up too much more than that, other than we expect 2 more arrests on this.
Chief, can I follow up on that one? Are they robbing people on the street, or is it delis and gas?
Both commercial and individuals, yes, Dean, both.
Like gas stations or bodegas?
Sorry?
Is it like gas station convenience stores or actual?
I believe they're grocery stores from what I have in front of me. From looking now, they look to be grocery stores. But I get often that we see grocery stores, and actually it's a gas station as well. So, but it looks like that's what it's from because they are using that car. We have that car, by the way.
Have we learned anything more about the 2 shooters involved in Kevin Thomas's murder in Florida?
We have a person of interest we're seeking in that case right now. I don't want to give up too much more than that. I do not have probable cause, but I do have a POI.
John?
Chief, can I just ask about the missing woman in the 113 that turned to homicide?
Yes. The young lady we're talking about now, Mrs. Crawley. She went missing on the 29th at about 2 o'clock in the morning. She's at a hairdressing parlor on Merrick Boulevard. She leaves there. She's not seen again. We then find her body in her car about 12 blocks from her home. We don't know if she went home first or it happened right then and there. So the autopsy is being done right now. She has 2 small holes in her skull, in the back of her skull. We're obviously pursuing it as a homicide, but we'll know more when we get the autopsy results today. We do have someone we're looking at. But again, we have a lot of work to do on this, John. We're a long way from this yet.
Wait for their romantic interest.
Well, I'll say that someone's known to her.
Commissioner, can you talk to us about the meeting you had this morning with union leaders? We've all heard that the FDA president left their meeting.
Yeah, it was a very productive meeting. This is my first chance to have all of the union heads and their executive boards come down to this very room. I started off the meeting speaking, and at some point when I was speaking, Sergeant Mullins did leave. He didn't tell me why. I was talking about some of the topics that we were going to discuss. I also reiterated my position on the Danner shooting.
For the mayor and then the commissioner. So we had a very successful parade last night. Mayor, can you say that the city is fully prepared for the marathon? We know that you're conducting the tabletop exercise later, but are we ready?
Yeah, I feel the city is absolutely prepared for the marathon. I feel we're prepared for election night, which will obviously be a very special and unusual night in this city. We've been over the details of the preparation quite a bit, and I feel like the NYPD is more than ready. And obviously, in the case of election night, closely coordinating with the Secret Service as well.
Yeah, we did have a good night last night, and thanks for bringing that up. Chief Gomez can speak a little bit more about marathon and election day.
Sure. For the marathon, we've been preparing for several months now. We've had several meetings with the organizers, and as the mayor said, in about 30 minutes, we're going to have a tabletop exercise on the 8th floor. We'll go over scenarios that designed to maybe disrupt the event and how would we react. But every year, 50,000 runners and over 2.5 million spectators. I have some starting times. The professional women, they start at 9:20. The professional men, they start at 9:50, and those with disabilities certainly start before that. Many layers of security. You'll see uniform officers. They number in the thousands. I don't like to give specific numbers along the route, but there will also be officers in plain clothes mixing in with the crowds to detect any suspicious activity. We have heavy weapons teams along the route, and they'll be mobile. They won't be stationary. ESU, CRC, and the SRG. The Counterterrorism Bureau will have officers with radiation detecting devices. We have explosive detecting canines. It's all hands on deck. We have aviation, and we certainly, with that many spectators, there's 2 million sets of eyes. Certainly, if they see something, alert an officer. There won't be an officer too far away. Call 911, or if it's before the event, you have the terrorism hotline, 888 NYC Safe. So we look to have a safe event. We're going to give more details tomorrow at a press event.
Election day and night, two parts. One, can you just speak a little bit more about having both candidates in New York City that night? But first, there's a lot of talk, especially from Donald Trump, about encouraging his supporters to watch the voting and watch polling places. Are there any precautions in place to, watch for or limit any voter intimidation?
We have police officers assigned to every polling site in the city, and Chief Monahan can talk about election day coverage.
Again, for the polling sites, there's 1,205 polling sites citywide. We have multiple police officers. There'll be over a couple of thousand police officers assigned specifically to those polling sites. Anytime you enter a polling site, there'll be at least one, if not more, police officers at that site. We've done this every year, and again, it'll be done again this year.
And let me just add, we won't tolerate any voter intimidation. So obviously our officers are prepared if there is any systematic effort to disrupt it.
Was that an issue in 2012 at all that you recall?
No.
No, not that I can recall.
So just to follow up on that, I read an account that down in Texas, some guy in an early voting mode walked in with a Trump hat and a Deplorables T-shirt that he then refused to turn inside out, and he was arrested. Would that sort of thing happen in New York City? If somebody were to walk in like that?
You mean if someone were to come in with partisan material, which you're not allowed to do, right?
We have, again, these officers at the polling sites. They available to them are election inspectors, people from the Board of Elections, and as well as our as our legal bureau. They were just a phone call away. Any issues that arise, we expect the officer to call the supervisor, and if they're not sure of what course of action to take, we'll check with our legal bureau, and we'll be advised by them as to what to do.
Tony, for Chief Boyce, it's going to be 3 months tomorrow that Karina Vetrano died. I just want to know if there's any more statistical update you can give on the lead you're getting in, if there's any sense of frustration among the officers or detectives working the case.
Yeah. No, there's actually a sense of vigilance and endurance, actually, more than anything. They know this case is going to be a tough case. Here's a group of investigators who solved some major crimes within a couple of days. And those things happen, but these things happen as well. So there's not a day that goes by, Anthony, that we don't get a tip or two or three on the Vetrano case. Each one is vetted immediately. We go out and speak to those folks. We have a task force up of Queens South Homicide, as well as the 106 and the Major Case Unit. So it's being actively investigated. There's no sign of any kind of weakness or tiredness or frustration at all. We'll keep going until we make the arrest on this, which I know we will. Great detectives out there. So the public is helping us out. They keep calling. We keep vetting these crimes, and we'll go forward.
Three more. Rocco?
Commissioner, and also for the mayor, is there any concern regarding Ed Mullins that how he portrayed the shooting and explained the actions that he took regarding the sergeant, and that gets lost in the fact that we walked out of this meeting that he made some comments earlier when the sergeant was first modified? Or are you confident enough that that the sergeants themselves and other members of the rank and file are getting that message?
I think I spoke very clearly on this, Rocco. So I think all the men and women in the New York City Police Department understand my position. So I'm not overly concerned about it.
Can I ask about Plan Now NYC, a website that the city has put out, encouraging people to be prepared for a terrorist attack and how to stop bleeding and what to do? Can someone talk about what that website is about and the need to put that out so folks will be prepared?
Yeah, John Miller wanted to have the opportunity to talk today, so he's going to come up and speak about that.
This is a website put together by OEM and Commissioner Joe Esposito, and it's to help people make a plan for any kind of crisis, including a terrorist attack. And it had input from the fire department and from the NYPD. So it's a good collaborative piece. But the key is people should have a crisis plan for their families. We are a city that lived through hurricanes, nor'easters, 9/11, and that is not, when something like that is unfolding, when you should be thinking about how do I find the kids, where's a meet location, how do we communicate, what's our backup system, and this website's very helpful in that. So I would refer you to OEM and the website for more information, and Joe Esposito to talk about it.
For the mayor, just to follow up on my question earlier, when you approved or supported the increase in the NYPD headcount, was it your expectation that that increase would fulfill the goal of using neighborhood policing citywide? And then secondly, your response to the judge's decision to scuttle the settlement between the NYPD and the plaintiffs for the surveillance case?
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, and I'll let the actual lawyers speak to that, except to say I think scuttle's the wrong way to look at it. I think these things go in rounds, and we believe that we put forward a reasonable vision of how to address that issue, and there's still more work to do. But I think the reforms that have been undertaken in this department over years have been extraordinary, and I think ultimately that's what will lead to the resolution here. There are tremendously clear checks and balances in place, and that's what matters. On the first point, my view is that working with the City Council, we agreed to an increase in the number of officers. We obviously agreed to a civilianization plan as well, working with PD. And that's the one thing we all bought into for the long haul. As the commissioner said, he and his team are constantly looking at efficiencies and ways to free up more officers who can be out on the streets, and obviously part of enhancing neighborhood policing. So What I think we know now, Ozzy, is that we have the resources to make this the central strategic approach of the police department. We have the resources to make sure that this is fully operational in the precincts that have had the biggest crime challenges. But there's not a specific plan for further expansion of the force at this point.
Last one in the back.
All right, do you want to, Larry, do you want to add anything on the?
Ozzy, I think the mayor covered it correctly. Because this was a class action settlement, the court had to review it and approve it or disapprove it. The court disapproved it. We disagree with the court's ruling, and we're disappointed in the court's ruling. We're reviewing it. This was a settlement that was negotiated over almost 2 years, very carefully between the plaintiff's counsel, multiple plaintiffs' counsel, and the department and the NYPD and the law department. It was fully supported by the plaintiffs' counsel, some of whom have been with this litigation since it started in 1971. We're going to review the judge's opinion. We'll be making filings in the next couple of months in line with what the judge asked for. In the meantime, we're going to go forward. Much of what was in the settlement, the NYPD had already implemented or was implementing. Nothing in the judge's order prevents us from then doing that, and we're moving ahead to implement those revised procedures.
Erica, WNBC, two things. First of all, can you tell us a little bit more about Inwood? We got some video yesterday around noonish, I guess, with the suspect coming out of the building. Do you guys know about that? And what can you tell us about him? He has an extensive criminal history. The other thing is, while crime is down pretty much citywide, it seems to be up in parts. What can you say about that?
Okay. I think that's we're talking about Jensen Reyes, the arrest we made yesterday. He's part of a 3-case pattern in burglaries. He's also committed quite a few burglaries. He's a career criminal, 24 prior arrests. He's done some serious time for burglary in Florida. He's up this way the last couple of months, and in the month of October, he commits 5 pettit larcenies, 1 grand larceny, 3 robberies, and 2 home invasions, and we are looking at him for a 3rd home invasion. So he's charged up considerably. Special Victims Division got this case because of the sexual assaults he did on the ladies that he did the burglaries on. All right. Your picture, as far as him walking out of the building and 2 detectives walking in, at that point we put out a picture of 2 individuals with hoods, if you remember. They were looking for those individuals. That's why he was not detained at that point. We didn't get him until probably a couple hours. Start looking at him for a couple hours later when we noticed that he had considerable ink tattooing on him that led to his identification and arrest. So that's kind of like what happened there. At that point, there was 2 hoodies walking by outside the burglary locations. Our focus at that point was those 2 individuals, not Mr. Reyes. However, cases turn on a dime, as you can imagine. And we started looking at him maybe 6 or 7 hours later. We apprehended him nearby at 140 Seaman Avenue, I believe, where he committed one of the burglaries. So thank you for that, by the way. I'm going to use that in court because that puts him at the scene of the burglary. We believe he came back. This man is he's a career criminal, as I said. I don't think he's sane in some respects. I think he's sane for court, but I think he does really silly things. So what he does, he'll get into a cab, he'll ask the cab driver to use his phone, and then he runs off with the phone. This is like in the last month or so, he's been a one-man crime wave in the 3-4. Normally not a problem place. So as far as your video, thank you. We'll use it in court. And maybe I'll subpoena you to testify as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.